I guess we all settled and installed. And my first question will be, can you give a small introduction of yourselves and explain us what you are building and perhaps also why you are building that?
Yeah, why is a long question? So I'm just gonna introduce myself. Hi everyone, I'm Stokash. I'm the CEO of Minters. We are a fully on-chain gaming company. Um, I'm the creator of Raska, which is a pod racing game on Arbitrum Nova. And currently I'm building the MMO Auto Battler with the name of Battle for Blockchain.
Right.
Yeah, I'm Ronan, founder of Etherplay, working on like autonomous world, and been building like Conquest and now a new game, Stratagems.world.
Cool. I'm Matt. I'm head of engineering at Proof of Play. We make a game called Pirate Nation, and it's been in production for about a year, and we've been releasing updates every week. And really, why are we building? And I think it's something new that we can basically be creative in a new entire world of building games, and that's what we're exploring and having fun building.
Hey everyone, I'm Kevin. I'm one of the co-founders for Akirio. We're a game studio. We've been building on-chain games since the end of 2021. And on one part of the company, we're building our own social diplomacy game. And we're also building our own infrastructure solution called Keystone, which is our own take on what a rollup would look like when you combine the architecture of a traditional game server with the EVM. And we're building our own game on top of this architecture currently.
Hi, I'm Ian, CTO of Playmint. We're another game studio building games on-chain. And what we all got in common is our games are fully on-chain, so it's not just assets, but what would traditionally be run on a game server is actually state and logic on-chain, or at least verifiable on-chain. And the reason why we're doing it is to try and create a new category of games, which gives something new to players, enabled by the affordances of this decentralized technology we've got for blockchain. So blockchain's provided the main application of it so far is currency, but we think there's something more interesting and certainly applicable to games that can be built on that decentralized computer.
Amazing. Thanks for the intro, guys. So what are like the major technological challenges you guys are facing, and which technical unlocks could we see in terms of technology that could help you going forward way faster? If you could give a small idea around that.
Yeah, I think I may start. So right now, the most important challenge when it comes to like technological challenges is basically getting the engines that we are using for the backends for like smart contracts in fully on-chain games to the state where they are like very robust. So they are audited, they have the stable release versions, and you can like really rely on them. So I think this is the stage where we will be in a few months as a space, of course. So that's great. The other challenges are not really that technical, which I think are more related to the fact of what's the right game design that fits blockchains, that fits being on chain. What is the new category of games, as Ian just said, that fits blockchains, that attract the players to the blockchain, or like to just being to just crypto. So I think these are the challenges right now, and of course, like the marketing of those products.
But if we have, I understand we need to create certain games that are fitting the blockchain technology today. What would you like to see in terms of technology to create new type of games that are right now not possible because we have these technical limitations?
Yeah, I think actually a lot of limitations is quite good because it puts your mind into some place, like in a box, okay? And sometimes being in a box is nice because you are sitting there and you have all these restrictions, so you need to have a lot of mental rigor where you need to find the solution to that particular problem. So this is great. So I think I'm not going to just think about what we'll be able to build in like a year from now, potentially, because I think there's a lot of great design that can already be built, and this is what we are focusing right now. So yeah.
Amazing. I might So I think what Stockage is saying there is coming from a point of being in this space for 1 or 2 years now, and we've kind of got,
absolutely.
right, we've got used to the constraints in front of us. It's not really a suitable computer to make a wide variety of games on, so we're constraining ourselves with the design. And he's right, you can do that and make good games. However, the design space available to us for making different kinds of games could certainly be opened up with various improvements around scale and user experience and so on.
I mean, I'd argue it already has. In a year, we've seen a pretty drastic change. I think for us, last December, we were doing VRF calls on Polygon with 2 transactions. Round trip was like 30 seconds to open a loot box. And now, on Nova with, DRAND, it's like 3 seconds. And so that's pretty amazing progress in a year. And I think to answer the question directly, I think the main thing that's holding us back is really maturity of some of the technology and people like us coming in and challenging some of those assumptions. I actually disagree that you should be building a game in the constraints. I think you should be pushing the constraints and coming up with like creative technological improvements that make it better for everyone in the space.
I think one interesting thing also is because I think it's kind of easy to scale up, but keeping the decentralization is where we should also ensure it's there, because otherwise we kind of lose the property we are actually building on. So I'm more on the side of let's build with the design constraint and then explore as the scale go while keeping decentralization 100%. Because I think if we lose decentralization, we lose a lot of what we are actually building on.
All right, some amazing takes.
Yeah, I think one general take I have is that it seems like there's been a lot of roll-up companies that are kind of spawning up different types of roll-ups, but fundamentally, I think the people are generally trying to connect different roll-ups together rather than trying to scale a single instance of the roll-up. I think those two are both necessary things. So you can have 100 roll-ups that represent 100 game servers, and each game server has 10 players. But it would also be nice if one of the servers can have like 200 players, and that would, unlock a lot of constraints. And I think overall that we haven't seen that much innovation on just the raw execution environment of these kind of EVMs or whatever kind of VMs you have. And I hope that's like something that the broader crypto space as well as on-chain games put more effort into. Because I guess like since the inception of EVM, that kind of constraint has really not been removed at all. And I think if we remove some of that, we could build much faster games.
Yeah, the innovation there on the vertical scaling is pretty minimal, right? Like there's like Reth coming up one day, hopefully, but there isn't a huge amount of investment in the vertical scaling.
Right, and I think, I think like as these rollups proliferate, they should look quite different, not just through like slight tweaks and modifications on maybe how much gas your rollup can use, but very, very different, data structures underneath, or what are the different optimizations you can make around, or trade-offs around performance versus decentralization. So that's the kind of like one hope I have for the broader industry.
Yeah, guys, that's amazing. So I also heard about decentralization and creating new game categories. So how do you see that evolving? Why are on-chain games going to create new game categories? And me as a gamer, when do you guys think I could find the new, let's say, Dota or DayZ on-chain?
Yeah, so I think one of the best properties when it comes to creating like new genres is basically emergence. So you're looking at the systems where you are incentivizing basically emergence. And I think, firstly, open source is great for that. Secondly, crypto systems and like decentralized networks in general, with them you can incentivize quite a lot of things. Like you can incentivize different kind of behaviors. For example, like staking in ETH. This is a kind of behavior that is by design incentivized. So the people just stake. And I think you can also incentivize other activities, right? So for example, the emergence. And historically, most of the very, very like successful genres in gaming industry came from just modding scene. So I think we can recreate that on the chain, basically, but also like make it much better. So it actually incentivizes emergence like quite like even financially, and then like if the emergence is there, like it will just happen.
Ronan, what are your takes on that?
Yeah, I've been exploring like on-chain game actually for a while, like go back to 2017, and there is money have been always part of the element of like, and interestingly with like if you play poker without money and then you play with money, kind of you realize, oh wait, there is something into it, and then you apply now to kind of worlds where players have in some way more immersion because of that, and you could argue that you could potentially do them with traditional tech, but I think it's missing the point of like money is more natural with blockchain, and also the community is kind of used to that somehow, and I'm especially hopeful with new generation coming up, which might be more willing to play with these tokens, and that they might have gathered with less like decentralized games, but then have them in their wallet and can maybe explore more. But I'm also, especially in the new game I'm working on, exploring the potential of, basically emergence, what I call like natural compatibility, this idea that you can start with a very simple set of rules and the community can decide to go in every direction they want. It's something I'm betting we will see, and that's what will excite the whole community to explore them.
Yeah, I really like the take on the modding. I think like it's probably the closest example we have of composability, and you don't need a blockchain for composability. But as Ronan mentioned, I think having the financial incentivization is almost legitimizing on that, because you can actually reward people for their work, and I think it doesn't just stop at code. I think you can actually make that available to any asset in the game. And so that's super exciting. Now we've seen the industry slowly getting there with traditional games. We've seen it with skins. We've seen it with various other games. And this is a natural evolution of that, and maybe even a really good use of the global payment system.
Yeah, I think for us, the two vectors that we care the most about is like, one, we need to build a game with high stakes. I think this is like something we need to lean into more. Like as a business model and as just like a way to heighten the feelings players get in strategy games. And then the second most important factor for us is just composability. And I think like our take is that like decentralization is definitely more on a spectrum. And I think in the early days, it is okay to, I think, sacrifice some of that to iterate quickly on a lot of the other features. And then I think as the game hits some sort of like volume or TVL, then like we need some sort of way to guarantee. Obviously, people won't play your high stakes games without some level of decentralization or transparency. But we generally think that like you really have to pick one or the other as you start and progress your project. And so those two are kind of the vectors that we think are quite clear. And I actually like the term like composable games more. I think it's more accurate to what we're doing. And I still think it's like extremely interesting if you just put a blockchain in a single instance and have it run extremely fast, and players could still build smart contracts on top of it. Like I think that would still make a really great game and makes some existing game like 100x better. So yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, cool. And that's exactly what we're focusing on at Playmint in the game that we're building as well. This is kind of modifying a game in place, composability, and we think that's a big affordance that this brings. But no, I've just come from a day of game demos in a particular part of the autonomous world scene who are building on Starknet with a tech stack called Dojo. And there was like 4 or 5 different games being demoed today. And they were all using not only each other's assets, so they were kind of interoperating with assets, but because they were fully on-chain games, they were sharing the code. So they were just importing the same code from one game to the next to re-represent. So one game had the representation of a dungeon and a logic for moving around that dungeon, and another game reused that, which meant the much deeper level of interoperability as well as composability in those games. I think that was really interesting.
So I understand that the composable aspect will be very important to create then those new game categories. But let's say we have this whole community of engaged smart contract developers on blockchain. How easy is it to fork your game and build on top of it? Imagine I want to build Pirate Nation with my ladies. Is it possible? And how hard will it be? Is composability really possible at this stage where we're at now? Because I understand we have a lot of different ways of building these fully on-chain games. We have different infrastructures we are using. How do you guys think about that one? Matt, can go ahead.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it certainly is possible for you to fork Pirate Nation and make Space Nation if you would like. We have not made it easy. And for that, I don't think anyone is going to try it, but the possibility is definitely there. And actually, that's one of the things I think we need to learn is, are people even going to be interested in doing that? Like, is that something people care about? And I think, we've seen that in other games, right? Like we've seen like in Warcraft 3, they made mods like Dota and Tower Defense. So the assumption is that it's there. And at least from what we're seeing initially, we just ran a tournament where we didn't even ship a leaderboard on purpose to see, hey, would anyone build this leaderboard, right? And we didn't give any documentation. We made it exceptionally difficult because, it's an interesting learning point. And someone did, they came in, they hacked away, they built the leaderboard, and then, that was iterated on, and there was a Discord bot, and then we took it and put it on the website. So I think there is demand for it. And I think that we'll see as these games mature, that become easier, since we learn that people want to do it.
Yeah, that's really cool that someone built that leaderboard and went to the effort to do it. And I think it's a real good proof of what's going on. And it's kind of easy to reason about players in your community building on top of your game to improve the experience for everyone. I think the question of what happens when the whole thing gets forked and spun up somewhere else is harder to reason about. And like that should be a part of the fully decentralized future of games. Like we shouldn't stop people from being able to do that. It's like
we see it already, right? Like all those nostalgia WoW servers, for example.
Right. But then the promise of the fully on-chain version of composability is that they don't have to do that, but then they will. So I think partly it's going to be about community. So where the community is, that's where the true game is. But also the fact that is possible. It sort of is a stamp of no, the developer doesn't have control over that game. It is decentralized. So if that is possible, hopefully it's less likely to happen because the players have more of an emotional attachment with your game if it is fully decentralized, is one theory.
And my bet is that, if we have learned something from crypto, is that there is incentives that make it that there will be lots of, I don't like the word fork here because I think it's the whole thing about this game is that they run. They continue running, and then you don't really need to fork them. You build on top, but you create new dynamics. We see that in DeFi with like vampire attacks, all this kind of thing, and so for me, it's going to happen for autonomous world, and I'm actually excited about this idea.
Yeah, I'm super excited as well. That's why I'm building this reputation protocol, and we also try to help the community discover these new tools or new scripts or plugins or new versions of games. And what I want to recreate is the Warcraft 3 lobbies that you mentioned. I think this conference, I've talked with so many AW developers, and they all told me the same. Yeah, I was in this Warcraft 3 lobbies. I was playing these games. So yeah, I hope we can recreate this nostalgia, but then integrate the blockchain will be a layer on top of it that will be bring more innovation as well. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, I think there's many ways you can achieve composability and interoperability. I think it's a very blanket term, and we can be specific about it. I think generally it's good to not have everything open and have like kind of like one specific entry point where people can modify something with a very, very explicit goal. So an example of this would be like Uniswap v4, where you can define these hooks in these pools. There's like 5 places you can do them, and there are very obvious use cases on why you should do them. Let's say to mitigate MEV or, you know, reward LPs or something else. I think that should be the same for games as well. So maybe you have like kind of one entry point where somebody can, let's say, first modify like literally one variable and then deploy a contract through UI, and then you like add another variable, and then maybe you let them deploy the whole contract, or like at the end, you know, write their own contract and deploy it. So I think it's like a very gradual process on, you know, making sure the UI is okay and starting very, very small, but at like a very kind of high ROI place to do it. I think also like having, so that's one part of composability, writing smart contracts on top. And I think another part would be just like having this open data stream, like making data available. I actually think that's probably like the first, I think that's probably the first thing we'll do. And I think there's some projects that we've seen in crypto that does this, that play out well. One example is like what Farcaster does. Like they have very minimal things on chain, but they just have one API where you can fetch the posts, and that's pretty easy. Everyone knows, like it's much easier to build a React dashboard and list all the posts than a smart contract, because with that you have to provide probably like a testing environment to make sure your smart contracts are okay. Once you deploy, you know, you have to upgrade it or whatever. Like it's a whole kind of suite of tools, kind of like what OpenZeppelin, like all these tools do. So you have to provide that, but with kind of just like an open API data point, a data endpoint, you can let people build leaderboards and all sorts of really simple dashboards. And I think from like a business perspective, this is really great for grabbing attention and basically just like getting distribution. And I think once you have that, like once, you know, Farcaster has like a bunch of clients, they can start asking people to build on top. And I think the incentive is like much, much stronger at that point. But yeah, the TLDR is like finding the path of least resistance, but I think the highest ROI. And I think it's like, for instance, I think grabbing that distribution, I think makes sense through data first.
Ian, anything to add on that?
Me? Sorry. I think that's all correct. There's like specific ways of interpreting and using composability, and picking your battles is correct. I think just going back a bit to talking about it being related to opening up sort of the different lobby experiences for Warcraft or whatever it might be. That I think something that we're mindful of is that actually we don't want to try and recreate existing experiences that we've had in games before too much. I mean, there's a lot to learn from there, but this is a whole new media platform, type of computer, type of playing, and a lot of what we're doing is we've all got quite different approaches and different ideas of what it means, and that's great because no one really knows what the cool stuff is that's going to come out of this, and it might be something that doesn't map neatly back onto something that we already know about.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think the phrase "nobody knows what will come" or what the kind of games will be the outcome of this, but I have some pretty good game designer here. So what would be like your guess? What kind of new game will emerge out of this? If you could give like a wild guess, how would it look like? Let us dream here. Yeah, so guys, go ahead.
So currently, I'm thinking about so the genre that haven't been tried yet is of course like auto battlers, and from my experience at least, from the things that we've been testing for a few months recently, is that they fit those restrictions that we were talking about at the beginning with blockchains quite well. So this is what I am excited about right now when it comes to game design, and also the fact with auto battlers is they've been kind of created in 2008 and 2019. So the genre is still very, very, very new. And what haven't been tried, especially by the largest companies, but even by the small studios, is just doing the massive multiplayer version of that. Teamfight Tactics from Riot Games, they have like 2 players that can play together. This is the game mode that's fine, but I would like to see that genre trying trying to do like the massive multiplayer version of that. So this is the game design that I'm currently focusing on. Like historically, most of the fully on-chain game has been like mixes of strategies. We are now seeing sandboxes. So this will be a very slow, gradual process where we, explore those limitations that we have. But there are a lot of like very interesting ideas, especially this year. So yeah, like I'm currently focusing on just auto battlers.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, because I think like if I may add something to that, it also fits to the like natural crypto users. So for example, let's say you are spending 12 hours per day trading, right? You can have some additional fun by doing some minimal actions. For example, you have like 8 hours window where you can deploy the units on the battlefield. So you don't need to think about that a lot. And once you deploy it, you can just watch it. You can just watch them as they fight. So this might be something like, if you want to spend like 8 hours just thinking about the strategies, you can also do that. So I think this genre might fit quite well to the audience that we are targeting right now, especially at the beginning, right? In a few years, we might be able to move into like larger player base. But right now, most of the players will be coming from crypto. So yeah, I'm also trying to think about the game designs that fits this audience quite well. So we'll see.
That sounds super bullish. Anyone else has some wild dreams about new games?
I mean, basically, I'm working on 2 projects, and I guess they represent 2 dreams. But they are similar, but one of them is, I think most of them is about creating stories. And it's like stories because players are, basically we want to attract humans that have to collaborate somehow and fight among each other and create story. I mean, in some ways, this is what EVE Online is doing. But because of the smart contract nature of the blockchain, you also don't rely on anyone. You can, and then you can build on top, which is kind of the other dream, which is like, you start with maybe a very simple set of rules, which could be like, anything. But then you have this interaction among humans to collaborate. But on top of that, you have this weird crypto thing that suddenly someone creates a new game using the rule of the existing one, and then suddenly making the community bigger and even weirder, and kind of, that's kind of the dream. It's not very specific, but yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that's really exciting here is we're pushing the immersion even further forward, right? So like, Ronan's example there of like someone comes in and forks the game. It's not just the game; it's also all of the things in the ecosystem around the game. Like if you have a look at like the blockchain right now, we've got block explorers, but the natural evolution for gaming is starting to get into game world explorers and starting to see that. And we see users already wanting that and clamoring for this like extra level of immersion. So we're no longer just playing like one game in a client. You're also playing the game by like trading on marketplaces that are not even built by the same game and affecting the world in various different areas. And I think that is really exciting. I think it's something that is a natural progression because, I mean, I personally was super addicted to WoW, and I remember like when I couldn't play WoW, I was like looking at my character online and figuring out like what I could do. Like this just enables that even more. And so this like extra level of immersion, not just in the tooling around the ecosystem and all of the games, and then the fact that you can change the game, it's just a whole next level.
Yeah, I guess there's like 2 parts. I think in the short term, I think like the reason why we're in the strategy game genre and using kind of high stakes, and we're creating a game that is much shorter than probably other games. Like it runs for 30 minutes with 5 to 10 players. The reason why we're doing that is because like concretely, I think strategy games kind of pairs well with the behaviors of current crypto players and what the kind of the PvP mindset they have in the market already. And I think like high stakes basically just heightens all those feelings during the gameplay. And I think it also probably aligns with business model as well. And I think in the long term, so like one kind of demo that we launched earlier this year was this game called Treaty, where basically people wrote smart contracts that represent these political agreements with different nations. And for example, like me and you could sign a piece of contract that says, I can't attack you for, let's say, like 10 minutes. And this is like super interesting because in traditional strategy games or any of these free-to-play mobile strategy games, it's either the kind of relationships between players are very defined. It's either like we're enemies or we're not enemies. But if you let players create these contracts, you have a lot of these like soft binding relationships between players, and that network effect is quite interesting. And it is like, this is an emergent behavior already in MMO games. We're simply creating the tools and infrastructure for people to kind of solidify these rules in place a bit. Whereas maybe in like EVE or other MMO games, like yes, you could have these relationships, but they just live on like good faith and word of mouth. We're basically creating this kind of like law or whatever like layer on top of the game. So I think that's quite interesting. I'm not personally sold on kind of composability, but of assets between games. I think we have not seen I think it makes sense between the same game studio, or if you have like a very strong, I don't know, like partnership or something. But I think just having our assets being permissionally used across is probably not a good thing. Like I think realistically there needs to be a good like business reason for this at the end of the day, and I don't think we've seen that yet. But I think using smart contracts as kind of expressing these social relationships is quite interesting in games. Yeah.
Okay, a slightly more random potential future game idea that we've been talking about in the team at Playment is God as a service. Which, so in games we talk about the God powers of the games is the developers' powers to change the rules, to set events. So many games run as a live service, games as a service, and they're live operated by the game developer, and the game developer will set events and make things interesting in the game, keep it changing to keep interest for the players. But in a decentralized future, there is no God, but maybe with AI, ML, and ZK techniques, we can have an AI agent that is controlling the world and operating a God as a service in a decentralized way.
And on that, I will have to wrap it up. Thanks for letting us dream, and amazing talk, guys, and keep up the good work. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.